let's talk. Let's start Poland. Poland was one of the teams that everyone's going to be getting a good look at week one because they're playing Canfield. So I think Poland, and they're kicking off the season on a Thursday. I think it would make abundant sense to kick off the previews with them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Poland is one of those teams too that they did what everyone I think just about expected them to do last year. They finished the year 5-1. That one loss coming against the South Range last year in that first game of the season. They ended up scoring 207 points. Get this, held opponents to just 58 points throughout 6 games last season. That is less than 10 points per game. They ended up winning 2 games in the playoffs before finally falling. So they were 2-1 in the playoffs. But Poland also a team, let me pull up what we have for their roster here and what I got for them. Poland has a few players that are going to be returning that are going to be very effective, I think, for this defense. The players to watch, I think, Dom Parker, defensive lineman, he's going to be returning as a senior. He was second team NE8 last year, as well as Christian Colosimo, the linebacker. He's going to be returning as a senior, also second team NE8 as well last year.
Can I just say that Christian Colosimo, second team last year. I think if I had to maybe pick a couple players that were going to be almost guaranteed to go from second to first team, Colosimo is going to be one of them. I've seen his offseason workouts on social media, and I've seen just the kid is just built. He's a rock. He's a train. He's whatever you want to call him at the linebacker position. You're running into him, and you're not going any further.
Absolutely.
So I think he'll be one of the guys that goes from second to first team.
He's really one of those guys that just exemplifies Poland's defense, though, and what it's been for years to come. That hard-nosed, get the runners early, get in their face, rough and tough them defense. So that's going to be one guy I'm going to be watching. There was some players that Poland has lost, though, this year that I'm going to be questioning a little bit how they're going to be able to fill those holes, and I'm going to be curious to see what they do to fill those holes. So defensive players that lost, Brandon Eicher, the defensive lineman, Peyton Marakovich, linebacker, and Andrew Santafonte, a defensive back, as well as a couple offensive linemen and Nate Williams and Carter Killigren. We know, though, Anthony, that Poland, if there's one thing that they're great at producing, it's offensive linemen and defensive players, though.
That is just the epitome of truth. I don't think a truer statement has ever been rattled off. Poland's offensive line, especially, there are a couple of things that are sure in life. Life, death, and the fact that Poland is going to have a good offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a real quick peek too through this the Poland football schedule this year. So, as of course we know, we highlighted this yesterday. First game of the year is going to be that August 19th game. That's going to be versus Canfield at home. Next week they host Louisville. They go to Howland September 3rd, at Hubbard September 10th. South Range is at Poland September 17th.
That's
September
a revenge game.
Yeah, that'll be a good one. 24th at Niles, October 1st at Girard, Lakeview October 8th at Jefferson, October 15th, and October 22nd versus Struthers at home. So I mean, right there, last 7 games they're closing it out with the NE8. They're playing 7 straight conference games, and those first 3 games that are non-conference, you got Canfield, which will be a good game, and Louisville might be another one that will surprise some people as a really good game as well.
Oh yeah, I don't think it shouldn't surprise people that's up a division, Louisville Division 3, and they'll be coming off a game against Barberton in week 1. Barberton has multiple players on the NEO top 50 recruits list in the class of 2022. Barberton has like 3 or 4 guys on that list. So Barberton's a legit team, and Louisville's going to be coming off that Barberton game. And they're either going to be riding really high or they're going to be trying to look to wash that taste out of their mouth. Either way, that's a really tough non-conference game. And what we love about it is it's YSN versus YSN in the non-conference. We love to see it.
Absolutely, too. And we know with Louisville, they try to schedule up a lot of times, too. And they go for that stiffer competition, and they're not backing away from Poland this year.
I think Poland is the smallest team they play in Poland's Division 4. So, and then they have 4 or 5 Division 1 teams on that schedule.
Yeah, and I mean that's definitely a game where Poland throw divisions out the window at that point, because Poland has had a string of success up until this point, and their size alone can compete with some of the best up there, and then you can rough and tough with some of the best when you have the size Poland does. But next up on our docket, which one we want to look at next, Anthony?
Well, it was, when we highlight, did we highlight? We did highlight Poland's games, I guess, but I want to talk a little bit about that South Range game a little bit more before we move on.
Yeah, if we want to, let's go.
Because the last 2 years, the NE8 in football has come down to South Range Poland. Last year, the 2 years ago, Poland won that game. Now the last year, South Range won. It's kind of becoming one of the local rivalries, even though it's a brand new league, just their third season in football to be in the same conference. It's quickly becoming a very hot and heated rivalry on the football field between Poland and South Range, and that's going to be a game in Poland that they're going to be looking to kind of get revenge. And a lot of people, that might be the NEA championship in the middle of the season if both teams kind of take care of business in the first half.
I mean, it's probably the best time to have the game, too, is in the middle of the season. You don't have to worry about the early season rust, and you don't have to really worry as much about injuries with a week 5 game. So you're pretty much going to have these teams as close to full strength as you would hopefully assume, as close to full strength as possible by week 5. A September 17th game where rain might be an issue, but it's still going to be beautiful weather, a beautiful night for a Friday night game. And I mean, it's going to be a game that's going to be, like we said, rough and tough, but it's going to be two completely different contrasting styles. But this is almost a perfect time for this game to be going on in the middle of September, in the middle of the season, right when we can probably see these teams both at full strength and see what each one has to offer.
I think it's really good to have this game in the middle, because if you have it in the beginning, as you said, you worry about both teams just kind of trying to shake off early season rust or trying to figure themselves out. But if you have it too late in the season, you're also worried about, are these teams really beat up by the time they get there, and are they at full capacity? I feel like at September 17th, that's the perfect week where you can say both teams should be at full strength, should be rolling on all cylinders, and that might equal the best matchup possible between these two powerhouses.
And not to mention, both of these teams in the 4 weeks prior are going to be well tested before meeting each other, as Poland has to face teams like Canfield and Louisville, and South Range is gearing up against Springfield week 1. So both of these teams are going to be going through a gauntlet of a schedule. But the nice thing is they're both going to see what each other has those first 4 weeks of the season. And then you have that game, and then you have 5 weeks to adjust, and maybe even down the road have to face this team again. But I mean, point is, you get to see them bright and early in the middle of the season, probably at their best, and then you have 5 weeks to kind of adjust from there and see what the other team did.
Another game that I don't think Poland can really sleep on is that they have to make the trip to Jefferson this year. And we saw last year that even though Jefferson record-wise struggled, games at Jefferson were a lot more competitive than games where Jefferson came to their area. That's a hard place to travel to play. For most teams, it's an hour drive up into Ashtabula County to play Jefferson in a conference game. It's a hard place to go and take care of business and play. And we saw a lot of teams go up there and, not play their best. And Jefferson's a team that could be very competitive if you don't go up there with your best. They were one play away from beating Hubbard at the goal line.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about sports, and especially football, it's a game of mental advantages, and you're going to take anyone that you can. And sometimes, man, when you're on an hour and a half, 2-hour car ride, and all you're thinking about is this opponent or is this game, sometimes you could psych yourself out too if you have too much thinking time and not enough just, I got to go out there and play the game, right? And you have that time, that delay before the game where you're just sitting in a car, there's not much going on, you might be talking with teammates, but you're just thinking about the game. And sometimes that can turn out in the worst case scenario for some teams. And like I said, you could psych yourself out mentally. And it's definitely a game. Jefferson's definitely not a team you want to think you can go into Jefferson and just be a pushover game, because they're definitely a team that'll surprise a lot of teams if they try to come up in there thinking or having that type of attitude going into Jefferson.
Would be remiss if we didn't point out that Poland, multiple teams in the NE8, starting a new coaching tenure with Coach Pavlansky. We've talked to him on Running Point in the weeks past, and he'll bring new fresh blood and maybe a little bit of a tweak to their scheme a little bit, and excited for a new era in Poland football as they join a handful of teams in the 88 that we're about to talk about starting a new coaching tenure with their football programs. So very excited for Poland. I think that they're going to be one of the best teams in the league. They should be up there, and we'll see how it shakes out.